The Secretary General condemns today's murder of a Palestinian child in the West Bank and calls for the perpetrators of this terrorist act to be promptly brought to justice. He expresses his deepest condolences to the family of Ali Dawabsha, who were themselves severely injured in the arson attack. Continued failures to effectively address impunity for repeated acts of settler violence have led to another horrific incident involving the death of an innocent life. This must end. The absence of a political process and Israel's illegal settlement policy, as well as the harsh and unnecessary practice of demolishing Palestinian houses, have given rise to violent extremisms on both sides. This presents a further threat to the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people and to the security of the people of Israel. The Secretary General urges both sides to take bold steps to return to the path of peace. The Secretary General reiterates his call on all parties to ensure that tensions do not escalate further, leading to more loss of life. Meanwhile, on the ground, the UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East, Nikolai Mladenov, also issued a statement in which he said he was outraged by the attack perpetrated against the Dawabsha family. The Special Coordinator said that this murder was carried out for political objectives and added that we must not permit such acts to allow hate and violence to bring more personal tragedy and to bury any prospect for peace. This reinforces the need for an immediate resolution of the conflict and an end to the occupation. Mr. Mladenov also joined the strong condemnations issued by Israeli and Palestinian government officials and political leaders, and he called for a full and prompt investigation to bring the perpetrators of this terrorist crime to justice. Mr. Mladenov this morning went to visit the family in the hospital where they're being treated, and Mr. Mladenov also met with the President of Israel, Reuven Rivlin, who is also at the hospital. And tomorrow morning, Mr. Mladenov will meet with President Abbas and will visit the Duma village where the house was burned down. And when we have more to add, we will. The Secretary General will travel to Washington, D.C. to meet with U.S. President Barack Obama on Tuesday, August 4th. They're expected to discuss various issues, including climate change, post-2015 development agenda, as well as the situations in Syria and Yemen, among many others. And the Secretary General will be back in New York that same afternoon. We issued very early this morning a statement by the Secretary General on the transition of the UN Ebola emergency response. And the Secretary General said, as we continue to actively strive to end the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, we have reached an important milestone in the global Ebola response. The UN mission for Ebola emergency response, UNMIR, will close on July 31st. That is today. The mission has achieved its core objective of scaling up the response on the ground and establishing unity of purpose among responders in support of the nationally led efforts. As of August 1st, tomorrow, the oversight of the UN's Ebola emergency response will be fully led by the World Health Organization under the direct authority of its Director General, Dr. Margaret Chan. UN agencies, funds, and programs, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and the UN mission in Liberia, national and international partners have undertaken the necessary steps to enable this seamless transition. The Secretary General's Special Envoy on Ebola, Dr. David Nabarro, will continue to provide strategic guidance for the response. And the full text of that statement is available online.
In fact, this week there were many acts of intimidation, provocation, and violence from the part of the Israelis against the Palestinians, the settlement, and the community of Susia, and this act of killing this child and his, burning his family. And also the Israeli Knesset, by a vote 72 against 18, they voted to punish Palestine.
I know these things, Abdulhamid. What is the question?
The question is, when the statements say both sides and they equalize them, the victimizer and the victim, how can that, any statement, should equalize between occupied people and occupiers?
I don't read the statement that way. I think the statement is very clear in this condemnation of the terrorist act of arson that led to the death of a baby, the wounding of several others. What the Secretary General is saying is that both sides, both leaders, need to make a courageous move and return to the path of peace. In this situation and many others, there is a spiral and a cycle of violence, which by definition goes around and around. There we have seen extremist acts and terror acts on all sides. That's what the Secretary General is referring to. Our focus is on the death and the suffering of the people. And the Secretary General, in his statement, talks about the aspirations of the Palestinian people, as well as the security needs of the people of Israel.
Nablus. The right of resistance by the Palestinian people is enshrined in the Charter, which anyone who is under occupation has the right to resist occupation. So there is no margin here for equating the occupier with the occupied, and condemning both as on a par does not really match the Charter.
I appreciate that some people in this room may have a different analysis of what I've just read. That's your right. What I'm
in the past,
no, what I'm saying, and what the Secretary, more importantly, what the Secretary General is saying, is that he reiterates his call on all parties to ensure that tensions do not escalate further, and that both sides, the leadership on both sides, take bold steps to return to the path of peace. It's the absence of a credible peace process that allows extremists to take the lead.
On the same subject, now this reminds us of the deletion or omission of the Secretary General of Israel from the list of shame on children under armed conflict. Will there be another deletion in the future? I mean, for Israel, doesn't such deletion omission encourage such settlers?
You're asking me hypothetical questions that are best not asked of a spokesman.
Okay.
There will be a report next year, as there is every year, on children in armed conflict. I think what we need to focus on is this horrendous suffering of this family, and I think the Secretary General has condemned this act in no uncertain terms.
On Yemen.
I'll come back to you on Yemen.